Okay, we're going to walk through the first part, the coding part of this adapter pattern Unit 5 question. So you should go into this starter project, accept the assignment, and get the URL for that. You should then go into Visual Studio and clone that, or if you use VS Code, clone that in. I've updated this project in 2024, so it's now a web project. It used to be a Windows Forms project. It's now a web project. Uses what are called Blazor pages, and it should run on Windows or Mac or any yeah, and you should be able to edit it in VS Code or Visual Studio. So I'm in Visual Studio here. I've got it set up here. So let's just run it real quick. So I'm clicking run here. It's running. It'll open up a web page here. Load that web page up here. We can select a couple different patients, or yeah, these are different patients. We can select a different medical procedure. Now, by default, there is a medical procedure selected, but make sure you select one, because I don't think it defaults correctly. So I think it only works if you select one. And then you should enter an amount here of coverage. This is, let's say you broke your wrist and it cost $1,000. How much is medical insurance going to be here? And again, I'm using very complicated medical terminology here to simplify things. Okay, and it should do some calculations. Each patient has a different medical coverage. So some patients will have different medical coverage and different amounts will be covered. So again, this is saying that I broke a finger, it cost $1,000, and $800 will be covered by my insurance. Here, if I switch to Jen, and Jen has the same coverage, it looks like. So David has only 600 would be covered by insurance. So again, that's the general idea for this. So I'm going to quit this again. So what we have is what is called an in-network patient here. And so again, and this is in we have a little insurance system folder here with our classes that we're going to be mainly working with here. So look in there. In-network patients will have a name, a policy number, and policy levels. There are 3 levels: silver, gold, and platinum. And we'll also have a patient repository here, and we will create the patients. So we create the patients, add the patients to the list. We're actually using what are we using here? Not a list. We're using a dictionary based on their policy number. So we can look them up by their policy number here. So we're adding things to a dictionary. And so the key that we're looking things up with is the policy number, and then what we're storing in the dictionary is a new patient here. So here's each of the new patients for that. And so each of these new network patients we added to the system, and we have a number of methods: coverage amount, to figure out for a procedure ID and a procedure cost, how much is covered, and it's different for silver or gold and stuff. Is covered just checks to make sure their name and policy match what's given. Get patient name just returns the name. Get policy number just returns the policy number. Here. Now, you might be asking why, if we have getters or setters in here, why do we have a get patient name and get policy number here also? We don't really need those, you think. Well, what we're using now is we're going to use an interface here. And so our patient repository is not going to be a repository of network patients, but a policy of insurance interface. So that we can have different types of patients as long as they satisfy the insurance interface requirements and can pretend to be an insurance interface, we'll be fine with them. And so that's why in here you'll see class in network patients implements the insurance interface here. Now it's interesting, generally we would call this insurance interface here. We have interfaces usually start with and we wouldn't put the word interface there also generally, but since we're starting out, I'm just calling it insurance interface to make it clear for this stuff. So that's the interface for this. Now let's look at that interface. So again, if we're going to be displaying information on our website about a patient, we need to be able to get its patient name, get its policy number. So we have explicit getters or setters for that. We need to be able to get its coverage amount and return a decimal value. So we provide a procedure cost and a procedure ID, and it does that. And then we also need to check if they're covered here, and so we just have to pass in the patient name and patient number and make sure it matches what is there. Someone didn't goof up the policy or the patient name. So those are our 4 things. Any patient type has to implement these 4 requirements. And if we look at in-network patient, it covers them all. It has coverage amount. That's this one. It has is covered, which is a Boolean. It has that. And again, it has get patient name and get policy number, which just returns the properties above here, the name and policy numbers. But again, the interface requires we have a method explicitly called get patient name to do that, because like in our code here we will be calling things like get patient name and stuff like that here. Actually, I'm not going to go too much in the web pages, but under pages there's this index.razor page. That's a page here, and that like will loop through all the patients and will call things like get policy number or get patient name to display it on the screen here for this. So it's used in the web interface. So okay, so what do we have to do for this? We have this new type of patient called an out of network patient here, an out network patient. And we want to be able to use that in our system. What we want to be able to do is go in here. I want to be able to go in here and add a patient to our patient repository and say it's an out network patient for this. Be able to do that. But out network patient is defined here, but it doesn't implement our class doesn't implement our interface. And for some reason with our systems, you're not allowed to change out. Warning, you cannot change this code. Use adapter class for change it. So you cannot change this. You couldn't add this interface here or anything. We want to, maybe it's, again, out network patients are often controlled by other providers or something like that. Providers not in our hospital network. So we want to be able we don't have control over this interface. So what we have to do is add an adapter between that. So rather than creating an out network patient, we're going to create a patient that is an out network adapter. But we don't have an out network adapter. Your job is going to be to build that. So that's what this is about. So again, to kind of think of this, here's our insurance interface, and in network patient implements that. Our out of network patient doesn't, and we don't have control. We can't control that. So we're creating an out network adapter which will implement our interface, and we'll have our 4 required methods from our interface here. And it will create an out network patient, and it will serve as a translation from the out network patient to the interface and translate when needed between these two. That's what an adapter does, is adapts or translates or things between that. So that's what we're going to do here. So here's the first thing we're doing. We're going to create an out network adapter class. So again, in this insurance class, we're going to say add a new class and call this out network adapter here. And it's going to implement the interface. So it's going to implement the insurance interface here. Now, right away it says it's not here. So I'm going to look at some potential fixes, and one of them is just to implement the interface. It'll add here the methods I need. And right now it's throwing exceptions. I'm just going to get rid of that code for now because I'm going to add some code in here. So we're going to get rid of this. it now adds the all the methods I need. Okay, so I've added the class and it's implementing the interface. Now we're going to add a constructor to out network that's going to instantiate an out network patient, because again, out network adapter has to have an out network patient that it can control. So let's add a constructor to this. That looks good. And I'm going to instantiate a patient. I'm going to not declare that out here. I'm going to need an out network patient. Patient. Okay. And then in here, I'm going to instantiate the patient here. So I'm going to instantiate an out network patient. Now, we're going to need a bunch of fields for this patient. If I look at an out network patient here, where's my out network patient? To instantiate one, I need to pass in the string name and the policy number. So I'm going to do that here. So my out network adapter, I'm going to have the same method or values here, and then I'm going to just pass those on to my network patient. So again, I have my out network adapter here. It's going to declare a patient inside of it, and it's going to instantiate that patient. It's going to be an out network patient. The out network adapter creates an out network patient, and then it passes this information on to do that. So our adapter again will create one of these patients here and set it up the same way. And now we don't really even need to store locally the new patient name, new patient policy, because that's stored in the patient we created here. And we can always get those using the methods for this patient here. Okay, so that is this part of the constructor. Now let's try get patient name here. So get patient name should return a string for the patient name. So I think I can just say return, and then I have my patient here, and I think there's a get patient name there. So I can just do that. So my out network patient, I'm just going to move things. My out network patient has a get patient name here that returns a string for this. Okay, let's finish this up. Okay, so get patient name was pretty straightforward. To get the patient's name, I just go to the out network patient and get its name and pass that back to through the interface. Policy number, I want to do the same thing here. So again, for policy number, I'm going to say return patient dot get policy number. It's not coming up by default, but it should be here. It's just a public thing here. I can just say policy number. Now, one of the problems here is that I want to return a string, and get policy number in the out network patient is an integer, not a string. So I'm getting an integer here, and I'm getting an error here that says I'm cannot implicitly convert an int to a string. So I have to convert that to a string some way. So I can actually, and to do that, I can just say dot to string here, and take the policy number, convert to a string, and then that. So really, I'm going out, getting the policy number, and it turns out to be an int, and I really need a string, and convert it to a string. I'm adapting it. This is my adapter. So my adapter converts it to a string and returns that. here. So we've had to do a little adaptation here. Okay, and the next thing is coverage amount. So let's look at that. So coverage amount, I want to call the coverage amount here. So I'm going to do this in a couple steps here. I'm just going to declare. So there is a method called patient dot get coverage amount. I think let's see, patient coverage percent here. So that's what I'm going to call. I'm going to call coverage percent. And again, I just have to have the procedure costs, and I have that in this method, so I can call that. So I'm going to save that. That's returning a decimal coverage percent, I'm going to call it. Okay, so I'm getting the coverage percent, but I actually need the coverage amount here. So let's say this returns 80%. So 80% of the procedure cost is covered there, but I actually have to return the actual coverage amount, not the percent. So I'm going to declare another procedure. Well, I'm just going to say return, and I'm going to return the coverage percent times the procedure cost, which I'm also given here. So if it costs $1,000 and 90% of it was covered, this will take the $1,000 times the 90% and return that here. Because again, this is what an adapter does. It adapts from this procedure we can't do, and it's returning me a percent, and I need it to return an actual amount of what amount of the total procedure cost is covered, not what percent. So I'm taking I'm grabbing the percent and multiplying by the procedure cost and returning that. I guess I could have added another temporary variable in here, but I just did it that way. Okay, so that's that one. Coverage is covered here. We want you to do something similar here for is covered for this. So with is covered in out network patient, there is an is covered, and it returns a string. So I'm going to say string covered equals patient dot is covered. And what do I have to pass to that is covered? I had to pass the patient name and the policy number. Same thing here, patient name and policy number. I'm going to leave it up to you now to adapt this. So we've got this stuff. Now it's complaining because policy number is a string here, and here I need policy number as an integer. So how I need before I can call this, I need to convert this string to an integer. Also, it is going to be returning yes or no, the word string yes or no here. And what do I need it to return? I need it to return a Boolean true false. So when I get this string covered, I need to also convert that or adapt that back so it returns true false. So you have to, I'll leave this up to you to see if you can figure out how to change is covered so that it will call this is covered with an integer policy number convert, and then the result is a string, and you want to convert that to a Boolean here value that you return back for this. Okay. So again, this is what a network adapter does here. So let's see if it's going to work. For now, I'm going to just comment this out and say, for testing purposes, return true here. Okay. And so now we're going to go and make sure we add an out network patient to the patient repository. So our patient repository is here. Again, we tried to add an out network patient, and that didn't work. So now we're adding an out network adapter. And again, this out network adapter should implement our interface. So then we can add it to our dictionary or a list. We have a dictionary, I guess, of insurance interface objects here. So here's our new patient, Kathy Modine. Here. Now, the out-network patients don't have policy levels here. They just have a name and a policy number here, but we can still add them to the dictionary, and then we run it. Now, with that in place, we should be able to run this. Wait for the websites to come up here. It brings up our web server, goes to our web page, loads it up. So now we should be able to select Kathy Modine, our new patient, select, and make sure you switch that, enter some amount here, and check the coverage, and it should be covered by a certain amount. And again, out-network patients, not as much is covered in this example. So you should be able to see that. Okay, see if you can do all that. So that's the first part. Next part is just to answer these questions here. And again, I think we're going to be pretty busy, so you're allowed to use AI. Just make sure you understand the answers to the questions and make sure the answers given by AI actually address and answer the questions here. So with part one, just commit and push your changes to GitHub, and then submit a document. You can just copy this document you want and put your answers for part two here.